Good morning, afternoon, evening, whatever it is, wherever you are. Thank you for joining us, our Philippine journey. Um, I spent a few days having to put this together, and this video um, comes as a byproduct of both some news and a conversation that I had with two subscribers um, at breakfast, actually, a couple days ago, last week, actually. Uh, so I guess maybe it's not been skipped, but many of you may have seen it by now. Um, but let's just put it up like this. Bum, bum, bum. Passport revocations due to significant child support debt. Okay. Now that's the tip of the iceberg. This came out May 8th, I think it was. Maybe it was May 6th. I'd have to take a look. Okay. The U.S. Department of State. Deadbeat dads, your day may have just come due. So let's talk about that and how it might impact present, future, and current expats.
Why'd you have to go? I guess this world's too slow for you. I think there's beauty in the gray, the cold, but you just want the gold. And there's no way I can beat it, cause I got no chance, no chance when it comes to her. She got the glitter and the fame, and I just wasn't enough.
Okay, so that was the title. That was a notice from the State Department. But I have to tell you, I have to start this by saying, it's difficult for me to do this video. And the reason it's difficult is because it's hard for me to relate to. Um, just briefly, I'll give you the reason why. I have a daughter with ex-wife number two. Now she is 23 years old now. All right. She is in postgraduate school. She's in veterinary school in the U.S. But while ex-wife and number two and I had differences, our daughter was never one of them. And after a conversation that I had with a couple of subscribers last week, I recognize how hard it is for me to relate to this issue. For instance, I was awarded, she agreed that I would be the sole custodial, financial, responsible custodial parent. And to me, that didn't matter. All that mattered to me, it had nothing to do with money or anything like that. It had everything to do with I wanted to be able to make sure that what my daughter's future was something that I was capable and willing to be able to put together for her. All right. I wanted to safeguard her future as much as possible. And I will tell you this point blank, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. While ex wife number two is probably or has definitely proven that she was a great mom and is still a great mom, she was a horrible wife. And so at that point, I had to safeguard my daughter. But I was in a different position. Okay. I didn't have child support. I didn't have alimony. Now, that's not to say I didn't pony up a good bit of money. That's not to say I didn't do all these things. But what it is to say is that I didn't have it hanging over my head from a court, nor was my child ever weaponized against me. And that seems to be a very common denominator. I talked to two guys last week. We were having breakfast. were talking about this because I was starting to research this particular video, and they told me snippets of what they went through. And it was horrible, absolutely horrible how easy it was for their ex-wives to weaponize children and even the entire divorce process. But this was about children. So child support, all right? So it's hard for me to relate because I certainly can't understand why any man would not take responsibility for their child, would not be active with their child. I mean, my daughter, I didn't have to share custody. I didn't have to share my daughter, but I did. I mean, my ex and I were pretty 50-50 on where my daughter was. You know, there were years where my daughter may have spent a few more nights over at her mom's than she spent at mine because of my business and travel schedule. With that being said, I didn't have these problems. Financially, I assumed responsibility. And while her mother never gave me money, all right, her mother certainly contributed in time, effort, financially, side stuff, the whole 9 yards. I can't complain whatsoever. And she never weaponized my relationship with my daughter. And to this day, my daughter and I, we speak almost daily. Almost daily. So, it's hard for me to relate how a father would not own up to their obligations. But at the same time, I then spoke with these two guys and I saw and got a glimpse into the horrible weaponization that was used against them and what they went through. And I found that just, I don't know how people would deal with it, but that's neither here nor there because we do know that there are people that actually are wicked enough. And so therefore there are laws in place. Now, with that being said, this comes from an article in the BBC, believe it or not. The U.S. to revoke passports of parents with child support debt. And that is actually been in place for quite a while, but it's just very randomly and very not very enforced. It's hardly ever been enforced, but Trump has decided it's going to be enforced. But there's a couple of caveats in this, and I need you to understand it. We're also going to cover the issue of what about if you had a child here in the Philippines and you moved back to the U.S., leaving your ex and that child here in the Philippines, do they have recourse as well? So we're going to cover that also. Again, this is the headline from the U.S. Department of State's disclosure. Passport revocations due to significant child support debt. And that's key in this, but it's going to change. U.S. law requires Americans to comply with child support. Now, this comes out of the statement from the State Department to support obligations in order to receive a U.S. passport and allows the Department of State to revoke the passport of an individual who owes more than $2,500 in child support. Under the Trump administration, the Department of State is coordinating with the Department of Health and Human Services on an unprecedented scale to revoke the passports. They're going to nullify, revoke, pull back the passports of Americans who have racked up significant outstanding child support debt. And that's key here, but it's also going to change. All right. This action supports the welfare of American children by exacting real consequences for child support delinquency under existing federal law. And like I said, this law has been in effect for years. Any American with significant child support debt should arrange payment to the relevant state or states now to prevent passport revocation. Once a passport is revoked, it may no longer be used for travel. And when they say revoked, they don't mean physically. They don't mean they went and got it out of your hands. They cancel that number. All right? You can show up and that number's no good. Eligibility for a new passport will only be restored after child support debt is paid to the relevant state child support enforcement agency and the individual is no longer delinquent according to HHS records. Now, that came from the state. Now, the article says the U.S. State Department said it's going to passports of Americans who owe significant amounts. The department announced parents who have an outstanding debt of more than $2,500 in child support could be impacted, but would be targeting those with significant debt, outstanding debt. So in all of the stuff that I've been able to look up, the current target is actually $100,000. That's a lot of child support. But Trump made it very clear. He's spoken about this already, and he said, yeah, we're starting at 100,000, but within the next 6 months, I want it down to every penny, down to the 2,500 barrier that the law says that we can do this. All right. Again, it says once a passport's been revoked, it's no longer able to be used for travel. And then there's also there's interest on child support in many, if not all states, on past due amounts, and we're going to cover part of that. Allowed under this rarely enforced 1996 federal law. Now, here's the problem that I see. The issue is that, because of this weaponization, are things fair? I don't know, because I've never had to face this. I've never had this come up. I've never been a party to it. I've had a couple of friends back in the U.S. who have had their divorces weaponized and their children weaponized against them. But I've never had it happen to me. I've never had that problem. But how many expats are going to have a problem? How many expats come here owing child support? How many expats have bolted out? Because the way it works is like, so the state has to monitor payments, okay? And then secondarily to that, most states, like for instance, most states, they have a child support agreement. The payment actually goes through the state, and then the state issues that payment to the custodial parent. In my instance, we didn't have to do any of that. All right. We didn't have to go through the state. And I know that there are parents out there that I've spoken to that they also don't go through the state. They have an agreement and it is what it is. But if there's any, most people have an agreement, it goes through the state then pays that spouse, all right, or ex-spouse. So the state knows when you're behind. The state knows when you haven't paid. Now they're supposed to be forwarding that information to the State Department or to the Department of Human Resources or whatever, and then eventually it filters over to the State Department. And the State Department can revoke that passport of that individual. How will it work? How effective will it be? How will it impact people? I don't know. I mean, most of you can tell me. Many of our subscribers have gone through this weaponization process. Many of our subscribers have horror stories that can probably tell about it. And I'll bet there's a few like me that don't. All right? Everything was just fine. Worked out great, other than the problem of you're dealing with a failed relationship. But with those things being said, they're going to drop it. If they drop it to that 2,500 level in 6 months, how many expats are you going to see disappear? Because I have a feeling the number of expats that owe child support, because child support never goes away. All right. Let me see. Cross border. So this is about cross border and the Hague Convention and the fact that you could have child support. But I thought I had a slide, but I guess I don't. About the fact that child support never goes away. In other words, once it's over, once that child reaches maturity, any past due is considered an arrears debt. And so it doesn't go away. Now, there's questions from some expats about, well, what about if I come to the Philippines, I have a child, I leave the Philippines, I leave my child and my ex-partner in the Philippines, I move back to the U.S. There is a method for them to go after you for child support. And it's the 2007 Hague Child Support Convention. The United States signed it and ratified it in 2017. All right. But when I looked it up, what transpired was, I don't know how you expect a single mom to jump through what it's going to take to get this done. I know that there are NGOs, there are aid groups, there are organizations that will help, but looking at what happens, I mean, because, I've seen some examples where this actually applied to an expat over in the UK. All right. But I've also seen examples where they got nowhere with it because of the requirements that were there. So, we looked up this data, but what do you think? Tell me, honestly and truthfully, do you really feel that there are that many expats that owe child support here in the Philippines? Do you think that there are that many expats worldwide that owe child support? Do you think that the Trump administration will actually go after it, that they will put the effort into it? Because I can't help but think we're not talking about billions and billions of dollars, and it's not money that goes into the government. This is recouping money that goes to the custodial parent. I mean, how active are they going to be at this? But it is a scary thought for some of you. For some of you, it's a very scary thought. I don't know. Your comments, your thoughts. All right? Otherwise, and I apologize. My live stream this morning, I don't know exactly what happened. I had a crash. First, I lost audio. Then I had a crash. I had to reboot and redo everything. And at that point, it was like, you know what? There's nothing I can do about this. We'll just wait till the next live stream. So, sometimes stuff works. Sometimes it doesn't. I apologize. Otherwise, please do subscribe, hit the thumbs up, and have a great day.